Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Uncharted Way, where we have an amazing guest today, Dr. Hillari Hamilton, who is the Director of Donor Relations for the Inner Science Research Fund, which, if you have ever heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza, this is an organization that works directly, intimately with the data and the research that they're doing now to put out so much of the evidence that's happening in bodies as they meditate and what's changing. And so it's such a gift to have Dr. Hillari with us today to kind of chat and really grow this mindset and expansion of what meditation is doing. So thank you so much for coming today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here with you today.
Yeah. So let's start a little bit with just kind of your story because you were a huge inspiration to me as to where your own uncharted way has kind of led you to this point. And so I know that you were a chiropractor and you had a clinic. And so, how did you kind of get into meditating and sort of different alternative therapies and things like that to begin with?
Okay. Yeah, sure. So I've been a part of Dr. Joe's work since I found him in 2012. As a chiropractor, there was a chiropractic convention in Las Vegas, and he happened to be speaking. He was doing something with Hay House and chiropractic, and I saw his name on the list of speakers, and I went and heard him speak, and I just thought, oh my goodness. As a seeker myself, looking to the answers of everything, I just thought, this is exactly what I've been looking for my entire life. This is it. Everything he's saying makes sense. This is it. This is all of it wrapped in a beautiful package. And so I started doing his work in 2012. I went to an event in 2014 with my best friend. She wanted to go. I probably would have never gone to an event, and thank God I did. And we just had the most incredible experience there. I mean, who knew meditation could take you beyond just sitting in silence, just like to a whole nother dimension, to a whole nother experience. And we just had the best experience together. And that's how it all started. And went to an event in 2015. It was a longer event, more advanced event. And in that event, he talked about dimensionalizing an object or dimensionalizing what you wanted to happen. And back then, I was had a wellness center in San Diego, California, and I dimensionalized wanting to make it a meditation for my patients. And I started on that intention in my mind, and all of a sudden, it switched, and I was awake. You're meditating. I was awake, but I could see on the screen of my mind with a patient, and I had my hands on the patient, and they were looking out a window, and there was 1,000 people in line getting ready to come into this clinic. And after I was with this patient, I was high-fiving all these doctors, and I'm like, what is this? I am watching this on the screen of my mind. And after the meditation was over, I went out and called my husband to tell him about it. He goes, that's interesting. That guy you were high-fiving in your meditation just called and wants you to start a clinic in Palm Springs, California. And I just about fell over from that immediate synchronicity. And 7 weeks later, Dr. Toby, who's part of our research team, and I started a clinic. And lo and behold, we all high-five each other at that clinic. And so it was a clinic for patients that were under the poverty level. It was a multidisciplinary clinic. And as we went from 1 to 5 clinics, I became really familiar with Dr. Joe. And in fact, I'm a trainer in Dr. Joe's work. And so I was able to train our patients. He allowed me to train our patients in his work and teach meditation. And it actually became a good foundation of part of the treatment for our patients. And so Dr. Toby came to an event within a year. It took me a year to actually pull him by the ear and get him to come to an event. And he came to an event in 2019 in Cancun, saw a woman on the stage talk about her cancer and how uterine cancer and how she healed herself from that. And he said, we got to do research. And that's how it all started. I ended up leaving clinic and working with Inner Science Research Fund full time because it's a bigger mission. It's what I know I need to do. Um, Helping one patient one at a time, I enjoyed that, but this is such a bigger mission that we're on, to
Mm,
bring Dr. Joe's work to the world through science.
amazing.
Yeah,
Okay, well, I have so many questions already. Of number one, I think that what you were talking about in the dimensionalizing, you know, what you're having in your mind and the thing that you want, and that being ultimately the catalyst that's really started this journey,
it's true.
and that's happening to so many people that are doing
Yeah.
this work. I'm definitely one of them as well. And that, you know, I think I know what changed me when I first heard Dr. Joe speak. And I think at the time it was like on some random thing that I found. I don't even think it was a podcast or a YouTube video. It was some random interview that I found, and he was talking about his back accident and all these
Mm,
things. And there was definitely something in me, kind of like you were saying, that was triggering me, like, this feels right. This feels
yeah.
like this makes sense. And
Hmm.
so
It just
what
rings true to your soul, right? I mean, it's just like, whoa, I knew I was looking for something, but I didn't know it was this until I heard about it, until I heard him talk about it.
Yeah, it's like something just like dings the bell in you, and you're just like, yes, that's it.
Mm,
And I think it's so cool too, especially for someone who's in the medical world. For
yeah.
me, I was not any sort of spiritual woo-woo person when I found him, and I don't think I even could have been at that point in time of my life. And I needed the science. I
Yeah.
needed to hear him say that the thoughts that I was producing was creating chemicals and adrenaline in my body, and this just flow happening over and over and over again was causing my body to drive the car.
Mm,
And I that just made so much sense to me. And no one, all of the cognitive behavioral therapy, all of the therapists that I saw, nobody was talking about it in this way. And it was
yeah.
so cool. And I think that's what's drawing people to this work, because there are so many things that aren't working. And
Yes.
this is the key.
Yeah. It is the key. Exactly. It's the key. And I really recognize that when I brought this work to our patients, you know, in medicine or in just the medical world, you're given a pill or something to take that's going to change who you are from the inside, where patients want to be useful in their healthcare,
Mm,
right? And what he gives people are tools to actually participate in healing themselves. So it just makes perfect sense. People want to, you know, be a part of who they are by caring about what they're thinking. Oh, I can participate in my health. How I think actually affects my body. I
mm,
mean, if you don't know it, you don't know it. But once you know, as Dr. Joe would say, you cannot not know.
right,
And so it's like that light bulb goes off and you think, oh my goodness, yeah, I deal with anger every single day. Well, when you're an angry person, you contract your body, and that's going to increase your pain level. When you're taking that electromagnetic field that you are, and if you're an angry person, you're contracting all that energy into a contraction, which doesn't allow your body to survive, and you're in that survival mode.
right.
But if you're in an elevated state and like joy or love, you're actually expanding that electromagnetic field, and your body's in a state of ease, in a state of balance, a state of homeostasis. And it's really cool that that's how, you know, how you think and how you act and how you feel does affect your health. You
Yes.
know, that's part of your will, and to be aware of that will center and knowing that you're participating in either keeping yourself healthy or contributing to being sick. I mean, wow, what an absolute gift life is. And we participate in it. So
Yeah.
he's really demonstrating to us that we're in charge of who we are, you
Yeah,
know?
and I love that you said it's giving us tools to participate,
Yeah.
because I think in so many times I personally have been into a doctor's office and I've said this is going on with me, and they're either A, didn't hear me, or just going with the typical protocol that they know. And it wasn't giving me any sort of role in this process of me feeling better. And
Yeah.
so I think that having a tool to participate in my healing and how I feel is so empowering.
Yeah. It completely empowering. And then you have something called metacognition, which Dr. Doe teaches. So it's when you can start observing who you're being. You're the observer of you. And when you can pay attention and notice, oh my goodness, these thoughts that I'm thinking are not loving to me, and they're actually creating chemicals that's either, that's creating, tension or stress in my body, which is contributing to my health. So we are, when you become the observer of you, that's when you have that awareness. It's when you're becoming more awake of how much life is a gift.
Yes.
And yeah, it is. It's that awareness of who you're being that you can do a better job for yourself.
Mm. And I think that's a space that, unfortunately, I would say the majority of our population doesn't know, which as
Mm,
we spread this ripple effect, we're even through this podcast, we're sending that message out. And I think what you were talking about, that first event that you went to, and you just felt something that you had never felt before. And
yeah,
that expansion, that interconnectedness to source, and that there's something more available for us than that contraction that you were talking about that we've been living in.
yeah,
And what a gift to be able to experience that, and that we're through this work, it is being affected in that domino effect, in that ripple effect, as each person begins to feel that feeling of expansion, connecting to source, and that they now have a tool to participate in their healing.
yeah, that's right. And to back it up with rock solid science and to quantify, not just to say, oh yeah, this is probably the way it is. No, we know this is the way it is with conviction because the data backs it up. We have great evidence to say, my goodness, this is the truth. This is the truth. And in our events, and that's what I'm so proud to be a part of Inner Science Research Fund, is because we fund the analysis of all the data. So Dr. Joe and his team, Metamorphosis, they collect all the data. So that might be blood, saliva, EEG, so brainwave activity, heart rate variability, microbiome, tears, cheek scrapes, surveys. They look at so many different things from the human body to see what's going on, what changes are happening, either in a week long or an advanced follow-up, which is a shorter event. But they take the measurements before the event starts, and then they take the measurements after. And it's astounding at the differences that happens in the human body in 1 week. And it's wild what's going on. I mean, we're literally changing, and it's because we're actually using our body as that instrument of consciousness and getting out of our own way with how we think, how we act, and how we feel. And when we get out of our way with our emotional state of being, our body goes back into balance, and our autonomic nervous system, what it does is it regulates all those different systems. And if we're out of the way, then our body's at ease, and then it can just put everything back into balance. It works at full potential.
Yes.
And it's how he figured all of that out, I don't know. But my goodness, he did. And
He
thank
did.
God he did,
He did. And I think, that was a part of, even when I thought of you coming on this podcast, and the inspiration that you also had a vision. Dr. Joe also had a vision. And I think I shared with you last time we talked that I was sitting at the last event that I was at, and I was so inspired. He was giving one of his lectures, and just to think that this all came from an idea, right?
Mm,
And hoping that it would transpire and expand. And in the same way, you had this idea even just with your clinic, and then obviously meeting Toby and him being a person that's now part of the research, and that just expanding and seeing inner science and what it's giving to the research, and
Yeah.
to be able to help bring things like the documentary Source for people to literally see what's happening in
Yeah.
these events. And not even, obviously these events are magical, but these things can happen at home. I mean, my own healing happened at home before I ever went to an event. And it's just that giving you back that tool
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. It's,
and
it's,
the
yes,
inspiration that
it's participating in
you
your own
help.
life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
To do something different, willing to do, and courageous, being courageous to do something different. And I just am so inspired by you, that
Mm.
the vision that you've held and the integrity of this work that you hold, and that it has so much rich possibility within it because you've also experienced it.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I want to rewind just a little bit for a second. So when you started doing these meditations and teaching Dr. Joe's work at your clinic, number one, what were people's responses
Oh my
to?
goodness. Just, it was so beautiful. I had this one patient in particular, just popped into my head. He was in a motorcycle accident, and he would come to the clinic with his dog, and the whole right side of his body was paralyzed, and his hand was stuck like this for, I think it was like a year and a half or 2 years since the accident. And I would teach them what Dr. Joe teaches. We think 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day, and we're not even aware of the majority of those thoughts. They go unconscious to us. So if you start becoming conscious of those thoughts, so I would teach them a lot of the information before the meditation, and then during this meditation, because you get out of your normal habitual thinking and feeling and thinking loop, you become beyond that. His hand popped open during that event,
Mm,
and he cried like a little baby. He was like a real, he was a motorcycle driver. Here, this tough dude, his hand popped open. He goes, I've been trying to open up my hand for the last year and a half or 2 years, and it opened during that meditation. And the whole group of people sitting there, we were just, and these are people that are under the poverty level. And this information is for everyone, and to know that his hand popped open like that was just, we all like celebrated him together. I had this other woman that had osteoarthritis, and she had her shoulders replaced, her elbows replaced, her knees replaced, her hips replaced.
mm,
And she was sitting in the chair in this meditation room, and she'd been in pain for 23 years, she said. And after one meditation, she was sitting there. She goes, I am not in any pain for the first time
mm,
in my entire life, or for 23 years. I had another woman that had PTSD, that wasn't able to raise her hands above her head. She had to have people wash her hair and everything. At the end of the meditation, she just said, I have to raise my hands. And she raised her hands above her head. I mean, I saw miracles in my office every
yeah,
single day. And I just knew the power of it. And Toby would go, what are you doing with our patients? And I'm like, I'm not doing anything. It's Dr. Joe's meditations that they're learning to get beyond themselves.
right.
And the more you practice it, the more it becomes you. And it becomes your personality over time. And so you're no longer that person. You become your future self. And so that's, for patients to sit there and see other patients overcome their pain and suffering, that gave them, permission to do the same. So I really enjoyed it. I actually, talking to you about it right now makes me kind of miss those days.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think that even what you're saying, I've never experienced pain in that way. Mine was anxiety, but I can remember the anxiety just
Which is a
literally
pain in
being
itself, right?
right. But I remember it just literally being gone one day. And I remember coming out of my meditation and going into the kitchen where my husband and my girls were cooking breakfast. And it was like the first time I actually saw everything
Oh
because
my
I
God.
wasn't consumed by my anxiety. I mean, I remember even saying, like, I could see the freckles on my daughter's face and the
Oh,
sparkles in her eyes and things I just hadn't really looked at before. And I
because
think,
your mind's so busy, you can't
right,
see, right?
right. And even, with pain, obviously that's something that you sit with every day. It's a constant reminder and it's an identity. And so, like you said, to get beyond yourself in meditation and to not feel that pain while you're meditating, you
That's
are
right.
giving time to that future self that doesn't live with that pain as the identity. And then something's flipping and switching in that body of saying, we're not this anymore. And you
Mhm.
get to live liberated and free and happy.
Yeah,
And it's so beautiful to witness.
yeah. And it should be that way, right? I mean, it should be that way. And it should be somewhat of a challenge to find that truth. That's part of the evolution of being in this life and being human, is to finally find that, to seek it, to look for it. And then once you start practicing it and becoming it, you realize, boy, I can't go unconscious ever again, because it's too good. It's too
Yeah.
good to stay in that state of being. Um, yeah,
So, what do you, going back to your clinic and obviously having this sort of alternative option for people, and everything that inner science is doing with all of the research, what do you, and I know that you talk to doctors constantly, what do you see as a possibility of that structure being in more doctors' offices or
yeah,
something to give a different option?
yeah. And we're definitely leading in that direction. We're going to change the paradigm of what healthcare actually means. We're going to change the paradigm on how research is done too. I mean, we're changing a lot of things. A lot of different institutions need to change because they're just not working. And yeah, you're right. I talked to a lot of doctors. Dr. Joe also has a program called Inner Health Coalition. And a lot of doctors come to this work because they're miserable in their everyday lives. Because, like you said, going to the doctor, they're not giving you anything. They're writing a prescription on a prescription pad, and that's their tool, handing you a piece of paper,
Right.
and you have to go fill that prescription and put something in your body that's going to make you healthy. How
Mhm.
did we ever think that that was the way it was supposed to be?
Right.
So, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, medical doctors, physical therapists, chiropractors, acupuncturists, all these healthcare practitioners are waking up to the fact that you've got to address the emotional state of being first. That is the foundation of what health is all about. Um, and most practitioners wanted to avoid that conversation because it opens up a can of worms, and you got to be with the patient more than 5 minutes,
Right.
and they deserve that. They deserve that. And give them the tools. And so what I did in clinic is I would write down, if people weren't coming to the classes that I was teaching, I would write down on a sticky, Dr. Joe Dispenza. I would write down his YouTube channel. I would hand out books, and boy, as soon as people have something to do, like I was saying earlier, and participate in their health, they're all about it, because a lot of them are at rock bottom,
Hmm.
and they don't know that there's an alternative way. And doctors feel the same way. They want, they didn't get into becoming a healthcare practitioner. Most of them don't do it for the money. They do it because their heart's in the right place and they
Right.
want to help patients. They want to give them back their health and put their bodies back in balance. And so this is it. And so I know they're the ones that show up and start integrating Dr. Joe's work into their practices. In fact, Dr. Joe just recorded 4 meditations for healthcare practitioners that are doing his
Oh,
program
I love
for
that.
patients in their practice, and they're waiting. I know, I see your face in their waiting room. So
Oh,
if they didn't find it on their own, all these healthcare practitioners are going to be offering that to their
mm,
patients, and it's raising the bar for how we can help patients. So and because we have the research to back it up. So that's the most beautiful part about all of that. And Dr. Joe is so into the research, and you came to his work because of the research.
Right.
That's why it's so beneficial right now, is because the healthcare practitioners, they studied really hard to go to school, and so they know evidence is the loudest voice. So they need to provide the evidence to their patients. And now that we're doing all of this great work with UC San Diego and Dr. Hamill and his team, we're providing the evidence. And I think it's just the beginning, to be honest with you. I think what we're doing is just the beginning. And the very beginning, I got the researchers together, and I sent Dr. Joe and Dr. Toby and Dr. Hemmel an email saying, one day we're going to win the Nobel Prize for health. And none of them responded. But I've had this vision since the beginning, in the very beginning. Dr. Hemmel was like, what the heck is this? Nobody was like in it
Right.
as much as I was, or Dr. Joe was. But now, they know, there's no doubt. They know the power of this is huge.
And we know your visions come true, Hillari.
That's right. We just entered something called X Prize, and the prize is $101 million. And so we got the research team to enter to win this prize. It's like a 7-year challenge, but we're one of the teams that it's called, how do you increase the health span of people? So it's not just the lifespan, because you can increase someone's life, but are they living a healthy life? So we know with the work that we do, we're increasing the quality of people's lives, not just the length of people's lives.
100%.
Like you said, I'm convinced we're going to win that prize at the end of the day.
Yeah. And imagine what that could do for the research team.
Yeah.
And just the research.
We're all hoping that we're going to have an institute. So if any of your listeners out there want to participate in helping us have an institute, we want to have this big, beautiful institute where we can study the mind-body connection. And like Tesla said back in the 40s, it's when science starts studying the non-physical, that's when research is going to explode on what's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I know the last event there was talk about, I think Toby had talked about, the state of our medical and how, as a country, these are statistics you can find out in the public, that like we are declining, and to have something like this, to where you're talking about we're changing not just the lifespan but the health span, and that as Americans in this country, we should be really upgrading ourselves and being the country to be looked at to what we're doing. And I think that through this work, it's giving us headway into that possibility. And so obviously, the work has changed both of our lives, but for anyone who maybe is listening to this that hasn't really dipped their toe into any of this, maybe it's even a lot for them to understand, and the science being the backing. Let's talk about Source, the documentary, a little bit, and what it has to offer for someone like that.
Yes, definitely. So Source, It's Within You, is a documentary that was beautifully funded by one Inner Science Catalyst member. So one donor funded the whole documentary. And it's research that we did a few years ago, because the documentary finally got out this year, but it took 2 years to get all of it together. And so it's the research that quantifies what we're doing with this work. So it's looking at blood, brainwave activity, heart rate variability. There's a paper that we published that's in the film, and it really demonstrates the power of this work and how the biology and the physiology changes during an event. And so we did, I think, a study on 35 people. So it's showcasing a lot of that. It's also showcasing how a group of people, so Hemmel the head researcher at UC San Diego, he was very skeptical. And so he's like, is it a placebo? Maybe it's a placebo. So what he did is he brought a bunch of healers into UC San Diego. And this is part in the documentary. And he was just like, is it the placebo? Like, he's just so skeptical. So he took cells, cancer cells, in a petri dish and several different types of cancers. And he had it in I think an incubator, maybe. I don't know,
Some
casing.
technological thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And he had all these cells inside this room in the research department. And then he took the other half and he put it in another place over at the VA hospital, which is close by his lab. And he had these healers come in and put their attention and focus on these cancer cells that were in these petri dishes. And the healers, with Dr. Joe's meditation, changed the energy of the cells, like by thought alone, and with their attention on these cells, which is mind-boggling, right? So that's in the documentary, and there's several testimonials in the documentary of people that have healed themselves, and they're beautiful people with beautiful stories sharing how they transformed. And so the film's getting out there. A lot of people are watching it. We were just in Dallas, and a few women came up to me during the event and said that they were there because they watched the documentary and someone showed it to them. And they weren't, like you said, a spiritual person or a woo-woo person, but the science intrigued them. So they watched the documentary and they were at that event and they were just already transformed because of what you experience at an event, but transformed just seeing the documentary. So it's getting out there. We're re-releasing it at the end of September 27th, 28th, and 29th in 17 different languages.
Wow.
And it's in demand. It's in demand. So it's going to be for free for those 3 days in those different languages, and back in English, it's going to be for free. So share it with your community. It's sourcethefilm.org. You can look it up and you can watch it during those days for free. And then if you miss it during those days, you can donate $30 and own it. And they have a bundle too with extended interviews with all the researchers. So yeah, it's exciting. It's getting out there and it's getting the recognition that it deserves.
Yeah. And, I think one thing that was so cool about the research when I heard, I think Himmel talk about it was, most studies, research studies, they're struggling to get participants in to do these studies,
Yeah.
to have lots of data to run these different tests. And I think they had came up with the quantum. It was a thousand quest for 1,000 humans meditating. And I was part of that study. And I remember they were talking about how it's the perfect environment. We're at these retreats and everybody's meditating. Everybody's on the same schedule. Everybody's coming into the same room. We're staying on property. We're eating the same things. And what a beautiful, like, controlled environment to really test this.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, to have 1,000 people just volunteer
Yeah.
to be part of this. And then, I can only imagine that they're like, well, what do we do with this many people's,
Yeah.
research? And
Yeah.
and that's where inner science comes in to help fund those things, to really have, and this is why this research is just taking off, because number one, you don't often have 1,000 people's biospecimens to run to do research like this. And then because the results are just so astounding, and like you said, the source documentary, that's almost old news now. What they're creating now with the research is showing even more, and just
Yeah.
as they think up even more ways to do different types of tests, there's just beautiful things that are happening, and
Yeah.
willingly.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And it's because the people that come to the events have been practicing and studying Dr. Joe's work. So they're volunteering their body because they know that the outcome is going to be extraordinary. They're just they want to participate in changing history, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to change. We're going to look back on what healthcare was like. Probably, I don't know how far into the future, but we're going to look back and go, "Whoa, that was wrong. That was all wrong." And this is how this you talked about, Toby and sharing the statistics, and we're only 4.2% of the entire world. We think we're this big, the United States, and we're this big, powerful, and we are big and powerful, but we're tiny. If you look at the whole globe, we're only
Right.
4.2% of the population of, the whole planet. But in that 4.2%, um, we consume 85% of the world's drugs.
Mm,
That's a lot. 85% of the world's drugs right here in the United States of America. Well, if that's the case, then we should be the healthiest. If drugs were the answer, we should be the healthiest place on the planet.
right.
And that is not the case.
Right.
We're in the 50s as far as the WHO is concerned. Their statistics is we're nowhere near the healthiest. And like you mentioned, we are devolving where our life expectancy is going down. It's not going up.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm so driven to get this information out to the world. Look at how many people are going to benefit
Yeah.
from this. And, we're right now this small little snapshot of what's possible. But everybody else deserves to know what we know. And the evidence is going to allow for that.
Yeah.
And the more documentation that we have, the more studies that we produce, there's just no denying the truth,
Yeah.
and it should be this way.
And, I come from a family of nurses and doctors, and my husband being an ER nurse, and I've obviously pulled him into the work, and he works with the research team now, and he's done the Inner Health Coalition, and he really understands. What would you say, though, to the people that are resistant or hesitant to what's happening? Obviously, there is the evidence. And what would you say, even as guidance to just get them to dip their toe in the water, to be
Yeah.
intrigued, something?
Yes. And what I would say is, and one of the things that Dr. Joe says is, do you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny? Are you aware that what you think creates your state of being? And if you could just examine that, what are you thinking today? What is it? Is it bringing you to a happier state of being? Are you're in control, or you're contributing to the destiny of your life? So if you can just
Mhm.
acknowledge that, just look at it and think, are these thoughts loving to me? And if they're not, can I change them? And the answer is yes. And that's what Dr. Joe teaches, is start observing who you're being. And if you don't like who you're being, start, examining who you do want to be,
Yeah.
and what are the thoughts you do want to have, and what are the feelings that you want to have, because they're affecting your health. And to look into Dr. Joe's work. I mean, one of my favorite books that he's written is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And I love also Becoming Supernatural. And just, explore some of his YouTube um, interviews and see if it resonates with you. If it doesn't, then, find something that does. Um, but it's not just, thinking happy thoughts. It's the feeling
Right.
that creates the healing. You gotta feel it to heal it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And I think a lot of people think, you know, there's the side of the group who meditation is actually becoming like a cool kind of thing.
True.
Everybody's doing it. And then
Yeah.
you have the other side of the bunch who's like, I don't want to meditate. That sounds hard. Or the idea that you have to sit with yourself. And I think that's another great thing that Dr. Joe's meditations have to offer, is it's not that you're just sitting in silence dealing with every thought that comes in, and you're like, how many minutes has gone by, right? He's guiding you through this process. and he's telling you what to focus on. And it gives you actually something in a way to do versus just sit there. And obviously,
Yeah.
yes, we sit and we be with ourselves, and there is information that comes in that we do get to observe, but that his meditations make it easier
Mm.
to approach than to
Mm.
just going to like a Vipassana retreat for days.
Yeah. Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, he guides you through it. He gives you the instructions. So if you follow his instructions, he'll take you there. And one other thing that I was thinking is, you know, pay attention to where your thoughts are. You know, where you put your attention is where you put your energy, is one of the other things he teaches. And I think that's, you could just learn that. Where you put your attention is where you put your energy. And so a lot of people, when they put their attention on their past constantly, feeding all their energy into their past, that leads to depression. And if you put all your attention and energy into a future event that hasn't happened, and the majority of the time we think of something in our future as negative, right? That leads to anxiety. So just ask yourself that question. Am I putting all my attention on the past? Am I putting all my attention on a predictable, not so good future? Well, you're not in the present moment. And
Yeah.
that's what you learn. That's what you experience with your daughter with the freckles
Yeah.
on her face, because you weren't anxious. You were present, you know? I mean, can you imagine if you didn't learn this work, or you didn't learn to be present, you just missed your entire life,
Yeah.
right? You're either focusing on what's going to happen or what did happen. You're never in the moment. And that's what I love so much about that's why we're so driven and so passionate, is because if you can live in the moment, you see, the palm trees, you see the leaves and the palm trees moving in the wind, and just being present with that is like, you're paying attention to the life around you.
Yeah. Making me just want to take a deep breath and take it in as you. I can see the
Yeah.
palm trees in my mind. Yeah, and I think that that concept that you're even talking about of just where do you want to put your attention, where do you want to put your energy, has been a great one for me to pass down to my girls, especially my oldest being a preteen and kind of dealing with that, weird growing stage of middle school and finding your friends and finding who you are and just this everything is so important at that age. And I always tell them, are you giving too much of your energy to this thing? And where do you want it to go instead? And that being such a simple concept that even a 12-year-old can really just take in
Yeah.
and understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So cool.
So if a
And then we have
12-year-old
these
can do it,
three
anyone can.
brains. What's that?
I said if a 12-year-old can do it, anyone can.
That's it. That's it. Yeah. It's just, rather than being distracted from, our devices and social media, and, just being pulled out and, just reacting from our environment, actually choosing the reaction that you want to have, being the observer of you rather than just knee jerk, knee jerk, knee jerk, taking your power back, like you said earlier, is just so spectacular. And, he talks about, just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's true. That's one of the big ones. He has so many great lines, doesn't he? I mean, if anybody wants to look at
Go
all of
check
his
out his
quotes,
Instagram.
they're just they're each one, you can just focus on one for a whole, couple weeks, and if you get that concept, it's like profound.
Yeah.
But just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's true. It's like, what a powerful statement that is. We latch onto our thoughts, and then we make those chemicals to match them in a feeling. But if we just watch them move by like a train moving by, and we don't attach to them, we're not creating that chemistry to that thought. We can stay neutral. And I
Yes.
think that's a powerful understanding too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the more that people are doing this, the more that we are raising the vibration, we are sending the ripple effect out. And just as you doing the work and your children seeing the example of you, and my children seeing the example of me, and then them wanting to be different, and then their friends recognizing that they're doing something different, and what
Yeah.
are they doing? And it's just this constant ripple effect that's happening, and it's so beautiful. And the more that we get people understanding how much they are in control of their thoughts, of their reality, of their happiness, their tools, the more
Yeah.
that this world that we're living just gets to live in so much more peace and harmony and joy. And Dr. Joe always says people change people.
Yeah.
And the minute we decide to do something different, to go on that uncharted way and try something, we're affecting more than just ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's that frequency. It's tuning into that radio station that you do want, rather than getting captivated by, something in a survival state, like the news or social media. You can be the observer of you and say, okay, I don't want, just because it's happening in front of me doesn't mean I have to sit here and pay attention. I can actually take my
Mm,
attention off of it. I'm in control of me, and I can put my attention where I do feel good. We forget to pay attention to how we're feeling.
right.
We just become that feeling. So if you can become aware of you, then you become, the decision maker, and, you know, then you find each other like we do, right? You find your tribe because it's a frequency that you match, and you want to be around those people that are just like you, because
Yeah.
it feels good, it feels right.
Yeah. And if we could only, too bad there's not a research for this, but if we could take like the 20 minutes that people watch the news and instead meditate for 20 minutes instead, like just,
That's a great example. Yeah.
you know, going from survival to creation and just getting rid of that one thing a day, how much that would just change the world.
Wow, that's a great idea. That would be a great study. Like, just put, yeah, have someone sit in a room for, more than just 20, like 2 days in a room with just the news. Like,
Yeah.
what's their brain doing?
Yeah.
Or even like movies too that are, look at all the movies that are on TV that are all so stressful.
Oh my
Like
God.
Lindsay and I can't, we can't watch, like, my kids will watch those things. I can't,
Yeah.
and I wish they wouldn't, but, um, I can't even be in a room where all that stuff is taken. It just
No,
is,
I
it's
feel my body
sandpaper to my
contracting.
soul. Like, no. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And so just training our brain to think differently. And yeah, I think that that's
It's a
such a,
choice.
yeah, it's
We
such a key
forget that
thing.
it's a choice. Yeah.
Yeah. And to have that awareness too of like, okay, whether it's watching the news or the movie, or maybe even having a conversation with a friend or your mom, and just recognizing that your body's contracting and that this is not the state of being that I want to be in right now. And I
Yeah.
think that's, even why he created the small generating meditations, to just recognize that you're in that and get out of it really quick, and
Yeah.
to sit in the fire and to change your awareness and who you want to be, and what you do want to put your attention and your focus on.
Yeah. So beautiful.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so people can donate to the Inner Science Research Fund. I'm sure multiple ways. I know they can also donate to see Source. Is that still happening?
Yeah, you can
Okay.
still do that. It's sourcethefilm.org for the movie. If you want to go to Inner Science Research Fund, innerscienceresearch.org is our website. And if you do a monthly donation of your choice, it could be $5 a month. That allows you to be part of our Catalyst community. And as a Catalyst community member, we have hundreds, sometimes thousands of people that get together every single month on a Zoom call. And we do a meditation. We just did a meditation,
Just this week, right?
yeah, just on
Yeah.
Sunday. And it's a meditation that Dr. Joe created called A Change for the World. And we had 390 people from around the world
Wow.
participate in that meditation. It was divine. It was beautiful. Just incredible. So we do a different Dr. Joe meditation every single month. So if you're part of our Catalyst community, you definitely can join us on that. We also draw a name of one of our Catalyst community members every single month to win a free week-long Dr. Joe's event.
If that's not
And
incentive to sign up, I don't know what is.
exactly. And then we have interviews with Dr. Joe and the research team pretty often. And you can ask questions about the research or suggest something like you just did about watching the news and, doing a research project. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
So you can participate in that with the research team for Q&A. But the big picture is you're helping us fund the analysis of the data that Dr. Joe and his team collects at his events. So we can prove to the world how powerful they truly are, that, you're participating in your health every day, even if you don't think so. You really and truly are.
I feel like every time you say that, I get chills up my spine.
Yeah. And think about it. I mean, we have this life. It's not an accident. To me, it just quantifies and qualifies this. I'm able to live in this body. I have nowhere else to live in this dimension, but in this body. So I better be good to it. I better be kind to it. I better feel worthy to be in it and to be in this life. And that just to me shows you that there is a source, because we're participating in how this thing functions. We're not just in there, we're a part of it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Amazing. Amazing.
I know we're literally quantifying source,
Yes. Yeah. And when you can connect with source is one thing, right?
Yeah.
But then you can also show what's happening in the
Yeah.
body and in the field and in so many different aspects. There's just a feeling. I don't know. It's just like this vibrant feeling that comes over of just, it's like, in that nothingness, I know Dr. Joe says this all the time, is so rich in possibility.
Yeah.
And it's like that richness that I'm feeling when you think about you're connecting to source, but now we're also quantifying it. Just the
Yeah.
richness that it all is working together and creating in this world is just, I don't have words.
Yeah. Well, it's and use the word God. I mean, that's bottom line. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's that loving intelligence and that intelligent love, as Dr. Joe says, that's within us and all around us. And boy, if to go through this life and not know that, you missed the entire thing.
Yeah.
And so science is going to show everybody the depth of that. And I can't believe they didn't study this beforehand, but I'm glad we're studying it now.
Right.
And I'm
Yeah.
glad you are a part of it, and I'm a part of it, and your husband's a part of it. And, everybody can be a part of it. Whoever
Yeah.
wants to join us, and we're the boots on the ground for the future, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Amazing. Well, I will add all of these amazing links in the show notes for people to go check out Inner Science Research Fund, become a catalyst, watch the Source documentary, share it with everyone you know, have a viewing party at your house, bring the popcorn.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful for you, Hillari, coming on here and
Oh,
sharing your wisdom and your generosity and your knowledge. It's an honor.
oh, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you today. That was fun.
Amazing. Likewise. All right. Well, until next time, thank you so much.
Bye-bye.